David.
Oh.
Pronouns he, him. Calling in from cavernous anus. What? Is a questioning theist, raised Catholic, and wants to know, if we remove God concepts, how could we examine existence? How could we still come to moral understandings? I think this is a fantastic way to start the show. David, you are on AXP with all three of these people up here. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. A little tired today, but we're good. How are you guys?
Good. Never had a bad day.
Excellent. We had a great time yesterday.
You're telling me about how bad of a day you had. No, I'm just kidding.
What's going on, David?
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for, again, obviously for taking my call. I don't really have too many of these. I'm not able to have a lot of these kind of conversations in my life with my real life people that are in my life. They don't really share maybe perhaps other opposite opinions of what I was raised in. And so it's hard. I'm currently in like a kind of a crisis of faith, maybe existential sort of dread here.
That's what we're here for.
As I'm, I guess, starting my my questioning theist phase, I guess, maybe moving into non-theism. We'll see where this goes. But yeah, so I had this thought experiment I was doing in my head, and it does involve like removing God. So if you could create an experiment, I'm no scientist, I'm not a historian, any of this stuff, but if you could remove the teachings of any sort of religion or any sort of deity or any sort of God from a group of people, and they were in this sort of, I don't know, box on an island, and they were taught about the universe and all the science and even updating the science as it goes, would these kids or these people eventually lead to a God to explain things that the science is leaving out, or we don't know yet.
What do you mean by explain the things that science is leaving out?
Just the unexplained. I mean, I guess we don't really. Again, I follow some of your videos, Forrest. You'll say that, all theories are wrong, but some of them are useful, or all models are wrong, whatever it is. And so it's like, so okay, like let's just say beginning of the universe. It's really fuzzy to me. I know that there's a great expansion, perhaps a singularity of some sort, because what the science seems to prove. But you have all these other people who have degrees, like priests and stuff that went to college and became ordained and.
Right, but those aren't exactly the same kind of degrees.
Yeah.
Well, but to a kid who's 4 going to church, you're just like, man with microphone preaching at me must be
right. So in this theoretical society where we don't have these religious implications, maybe one of the things that we would focus on is making sure that kids don't accept arguments from authority, and they understand that just because somebody says something really confidently or has a fancy title or has a big microphone, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. And we would teach critical thinking at a younger age, and we would teach skepticism at a younger age, and you wouldn't have to wait until you go to college to learn how to criticize somebody with authority and how to think through what they're saying. And they would learn that not all degrees are created equal. I mean, flip, dude, I've got a handful in biology. I wouldn't confidently talk about stuff in chemistry that I don't know super well, or geology even though they're still science. So I certainly wouldn't expect somebody with a bunch of degrees in theology to then come in and try to fill in the blanks in physics. Yeah. Those are all lessons that we could teach. And as far as like the unanswered questions so far, I would imagine that in this society that you're talking about, they would address them the same way that we do. They would continue probing the universe. They would accept saying, I don't know, even if they're not satisfied with that answer. They would keep looking for new stuff. And in concepts of morality, because that was what I saw here in the call screen, you said, could we still come to moral understandings? Yeah, they would be able to do that the exact same way that you do. You certainly don't look to the Bible for your morality. That's why you're not in jail. But if you, as a society, we would come to understandings about how to treat people well and how to treat each other like we would want ourselves to be treated, or better yet, how they would want themselves to be treated. We would learn to do things that benefit society and humans flourishing, and we would learn to not do things that kind of hinder that process. I don't think that it would be any far stretch to say if you took religion out of this metaphorical or this theoretical society you're talking about, that they would be able to progress just as far, if not significantly farther, than we are today.
Yeah, and I thought, well, actually, I want you to respond. I want to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Oh, me to respond.
Yeah, I don't want to just tag like 100 things at you.
Right.
No, that's all. I'm happy just to listen to you guys, but yeah, I don't. It's the morality without religion. I mean, like I know, JMike, I think a few videos ago, I did a deep dive very quickly on many a road trip with your lovely podcast. You've said like morality about, tossing a kid off a roof in both worlds where there's no, one's got a God, one doesn't. They're both obviously it's bad, but like I again just indoctrinated from a small age that like you're just, these are the commandments and these are the things and this is morality and God's all of this good. And again, like Catholicism versus like Christianity, I mean, we didn't use all of these I don't know a single passage in the Bible like for chapter to number or anything, or just told that what. So,
yeah, and this
slavery I didn't even know was in the Bible until recently.
Well, yeah, this is like tough for me too, because so like my family is like my mom's Catholic, but like I grew up like differently. Like so it's hard for me because I had a really awesome upbringing. So like I wasn't like, here's how to reason, like believe this, that, and that. It was very free form. It was obviously they gave me the tools, but they didn't add all this kind of extra stuff that I see a lot of religious people go through, where now they're like 30 or 20 trying to like figure out things in the world, like, protecting themselves from NFT scams. Or I bring this up all the time because, it's all related, right? It's all gonna come back to, is this person a con man? Is this a true proposition? Is somebody trying to sell it as a true proposition for some advantage? And I had such freedom there. So when I hear people talk, this is like a really tough thing for me to get under. And that's also something I work out where I'm like, I don't want to yell at somebody knowing this. But that all said, like, I feel like if we're going to play this like thought experiment kind of game with it, like I'm curious what you think about this. And I know that this is probably crude, but like, maybe I just give it a shot and see what you think. Like, the way I think about this is like, imagine a world where it's just like me and Dan in this world. Yeah. And like Dan comes up to me and just like pushes me. Right. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, and so I push him back. And we kind of sit there for a second and we push each other around a little bit. And Dan's like, all right, like, my bad. I don't like the way this feels to me. And I'm like, I report back to him, I really would prefer that you ought not do that either. And we come to some like, social contract or some agreement. And then we add like Forrest to the room and we play the push game again.
Yeah.
And then like people from the audience are right. We do this all the time, or up until we get to 7-8 billion people. And for this hypothetical, like assume we all just agree, which is not the case. We don't agree on like all these kind of moral beliefs. Nowhere in there when we have this agreement is it pointing to like, hey, there's something independent of us that makes this true. Right? There's some like shared nature that we have where, of course, when I push Forrest or I push Dan, it's very similar like physiologial response that I do. And we can connect with each other on this and come to some type of agreement. I struggle to find that in these cases where we're considering this, that we don't do that now. Nobody points to some moral fact in a disagreement or in politics or anything where they're like, that's the stance independent moral fact and we ought to do that thing. It's a bunch of people giving their opinions and stances, and a lot of times it's congruent, and a lot of times it's a little bit, you have to get a little bit more deep into it. But I think when you focus on the well-being of others, or just like, someone's overall mental health, you have all this in consideration, and you both accept propositions in that realm, it's not hard for you to start developing your normative ethical theory. I mean, I don't know if that helps at all. It's probably long-winded, but I'm curious what you think about that like really crude kind of thought experiment.
Yeah, actually, I really like how kind of simple and dumbed down that was. Not to say that was a dumb.
Music to my ears.
I love how stupid that was, JMike.
Music to my ears.
JMike, you're really good at making things sound really dumb.
That's wonderful.
Hey, David, don't listen to these fucking guys. All right, I like to hear that because my biggest problem is like not being able to transition out of.
He's too smart, is he?
No, oh my God,
he's just too smart.
Yeah, he is.
Imposter syndrome, lightning rod of imposter syndrome. But yeah.
No, I love it. It's so easy to understand. I was happy. I totally get that. It's just a matter of me, I think, building the bridge away from kind of my indoctrination and giving myself a bit of a grace. I told one thing at 4 years old, 5 years old, whatever it was, when I started going and I got really into the church and I was like, did everything but say the mass. And, that felt a whole different way. I don't know. There's just a lot of like stuff I think I got to get. It's on me, just to kind of get over and just sort of I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you this, David.
Critically, I think you guys are saying.
I'll tell you this. One of the hardest things for me to deconstruct from my Christianity was my understanding of moral philosophy, because I had an understanding that all of my understanding of what's right and wrong come from God on some level, right? Because we're made in His divine image and blah, 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 right? But when I took an example from, say, like anthropology, and I realized, okay, well, Homo sapiens have been around, modern Homo sapiens has been around for at least 200,000, some say 300,000 years. Like most of that
6,
time period.
What are you talking about?
6,000, right? No, when you have that long of a time period, and most of that is obviously not recorded history, but these are groups of people who had to get together and figure stuff out. Whether or not they invoked religion in doing that or not, I can't speak to, but surely some of them just had to say, hey, I just have some interests, you have some interests, and then that's how just society forms, right? Like it's a lot. I mean, I'm giving JMike crap here because I love him, but like it's true. Like if you really just think about it as just like two people in a room trying to figure stuff out, you really don't have to get to God at all to understand, hey, this is what's going to work out best for us. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, love all of that. It's a simple. I think that's my biggest hang up is just like, okay, you have two people in a room, that's great, but you're just kind of figuring out how to treat each other, which is awesome. And I definitely want to just treat my neighbors as much as, as good as I want to be treated. I try to lead by that, even when people are, shitty to me or having a bad, I give them the benefit of that. Hey, just having a bad day. Maybe they snap to me. Maybe I don't have to take it personally kind of thing. But like when you get into like the science end of things, and when the I don't know, like that's a huge thing for me. Like the not accepting. Accepting I don't know is like an answer, and just like being okay with it. I don't know. It's just, we were just taught like God gave us science to explain shit, and whatever we can't explain, that's God, and we don't question because God doesn't like questions.
And isn't it funny how the things we can't explain keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller? So the God keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then pretty soon it explodes, and then it's everything again. It's wild. Whenever I have people call in and they talk about, like, pick your favorite, abiogenesis, evolution, whatever it is. It's like, you can't explain this little chunk. It's like, okay, but we couldn't explain about 30 other chunks 10 years ago, and we filled all of those in, and you used to say the exact same thing about all of those. So what are you going to say now when we fill in this one? You're just going to have to find another pocket of ignorance to cram your God into. And what inevitably happens is that when something isn't explained scientifically, that means it's unexplainable, therefore it's God.
Right.
And when something is explained scientifically, it's incredible and complex, therefore it's God. And like, I really, really wish that argument could just be honest, which is just, I like the idea that a guy did the thing, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole argument is there's some guy and he did it, and that's the argument. And instead, we have to play this game where we pretend like you're being honest. We pretend like you're looking for a reason. We pretend like you've really thought about the science. We pretend like you're up to date on the information when really, there's a guy, and you like the guy, and you want to say that the guy did the things because he's a space wizard and he can do cool shit like that. And like that's just not really an argument worth having. But it sounds to me, David, like you're well on your way to already tearing all of this apart. It says that you're in your questioning phase. It sounds like you're properly into your deconstruction if these are things that you're really thinking about seriously. And it sounds like you are inches from casting off the chains of this religion, and I really wish you the best.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious, because I'm curious what Forrest's view on this, because you seem to be like really focused on the science, moral thing, and I don't know what science I called you science. What you pretty much are science.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Science. Pleasure to meet you.
What Forrest's take on this when we talk about like values or morals in science? Curious on that take because a lot of that project seems to be undertaken by like moral philosophers or like they're coming up with like normative ethical theories, which I don't think of like. There's clearly not one we should all adopt because some philosophers had said so. There's not really a consensus like there is in science, which is what
I got to tell you guys something. JMike's been going on a crazy tangent with the normative ethics this weekend. He's like, we were on the back cruise yesterday. He was ranting and raving. I was like, sir, this is a Wendy's. Like, he was just all over the place with it. Anyway, go ahead.
But like there's views like Cornell realism. I don't pretend to know about a lot of these, but there's views you can find in like the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, like Cornell realism, moral naturalism, stuff like that. And that might be
Cornell realism.
Yeah, Jackson realism. Yeah,
I was reading it in the bath yesterday.
Yeah,
it was a fantastic read.
Well, these positions like they try to like give some type of moral framework or without God, but I don't know that kind of stuff would interest you if you're really looking into like the science, because that's going to be a lot of people speculating in the armchair. But I'm curious, like, what you think, like, where the values kind of moral frame, where he can look on something that's probably more tangible. I
mean, like, flip, dude, if you're interested in, like, the science overlap in morality, Sam Harris famously wrote his book, The Moral Landscape, which is basically the whole thesis statement is that we can more or less quantify human health and well-being. We have science of human health, and we have psychology, and we have all these things. We understand what makes humans prosperous. And so moral is trying to get closer to that, and amoral is getting away from that, and that there's no one thing that is the most moral. It's a landscape. There's peaks and valleys. It's a multidimensional thing, and some things can be equally moral as other things. You don't have to pick one. It's not to say that we're going to consult some supercomputer to try to figure out which university to go to or what you should have for lunch or how many children you should have. It's just that you can take a more rational approach to the concept of morality and leave, supposedly so-called objective sources like God, which doesn't make any sense because if God is the source of morality, then he's a subject, so it's also subjective. It's fine.
Wait, it's dependent on his stance?
Exactly. It would necessarily still be subjective. Whatever. The point is we can leave all these things out because at the end of the day, even though there is some complexity, eating apples is a good thing for your health, but eating too many can be bad. Eating rat poison is bad for your health, even though we make a lot of medication out of things that are toxins and whatnot like that. And you could theoretically build up an immunity, blah, blah, blah. There's a million ifs and buts, unlesses, untils, and all these other caveats and couches around every single statement, but we can still use our rationality to come up with morality as well. And so, like, those are some things I would look into, that kind of concept. I remember reading Sam's book when I was in like my undergrad at some point, and like I haven't read it and can't even tell you how long, but I remember enjoying it. So check it out, and then look up other things like that, and look up criticisms of that as well. Look up people who think that he's an idiot and that the book is terrible, and then see why they say some of those things. And if they say 'cause God, then maybe ignore them as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, David, I really appreciate you calling in. I really appreciate your time. I'll let you have the last word, and then we're going to move on to the next caller, okay?
Yeah. No, thank you all three for taking your time and having a discussion with me. It's my first ever really kind of deep dive into talking about it with other humans besides my own brain. So this is incredibly helpful. And maybe I'll call back and do some updates.
I'll add one thing.
You guys will have me.
There's like online communities, like, I go on different platforms, and it's like a revolving door of theists and atheists. And you can, maybe you don't think you'll make progress, but it really helps kind of develop your skills and talking with other people and feeling more prepared and not foggy and stuff like that. I highly suggest, if that's interesting to you or if that doesn't make your anxiety kind of crazy, to look at that. Because for some people, it's like, they just can't even think about that thought of going and doing that stuff. So
yeah. Anyway, David, I think you're well on your way, man. If these are the kind of questions you're calling in with now at the beginning of your journey, you're going to be great.
Yeah.